Hello, welcome back to Hazel Jane Tarot, and today, as you can see from the title, I'm going to show you some decks that are leaving my collection. So I did a full deck collection at the end of 2021, and I did talk about how a lot of the decks I was going to try to get to know or work with at some point, and at the end of the day, I have quite a lot of decks now. When I took the 17 decks I'm going to show you today out, I still have like 35 Oracle decks and 40 something tarot decks. So I'm not short of a tarot deck. And I think what happened to me is the same as happened to a lot of people during the pandemic. Is we were at home and we were, well, I don't know about you, but I certainly was shopping online as a form of comfort and giving a bit of excitement, waiting for the post to arrive and opening the new thing, to break up the being at home. And that didn't just happen during the months that we were in lockdown here in the UK. That happened kind of throughout 2020 and 2021. I bought a lot of new decks, and of course my Christmas and birthday wish lists were full of decks, so I got a lot of decks for birthdays and Christmas. And it's just more than I could ever use. So I got a little bit ruthless and I went through my collection and just went, no, this is going. And I'm going to show you what's going and why today. So if you're curious, I'm going to be posting these decks up for sale in some Facebook groups. Basically, that's how I would move the decks along. And the ones that don't sell, I will think about putting in a tarot trade group. And then if they don't trade, I'll give them away, with a few exceptions, which I'll keep if I can't sell. And I'll show you why. So, the Wings of Wisdom Oracle deck by Alana Fairchild and, crucially, Lindy Longhurst. You've seen me talk about this before because Lindy Longhurst is an artist I was familiar with from when I lived in Australia. I'd come across her art. I have one of her prints. I really enjoy her style. It's really cute and whimsical, but I really hate the design of these cards. There's an animal, or there's the bird, there's the keywords, there's an affirmation, and then there's a big spiel on the back. And then there's more in the guidebook written by Alana Fairchild, so it's not short. And it's just too much for me, and I've never really used it. I mean, you can see the deck has been shuffled, it's not in order. By the way, before I sell or trade a deck, I always put it back in order and check it against the guidebook to make sure every single card is there. But yeah, I was keeping it to maybe do something with it or cut it or trim it or craft project it. And I've had it for 2 years. It's been sitting there, or more than 2 years. And it's lovely and somebody else will enjoy it. And it's just taking up space on a shelf for me. I'd love to see, I know Alana Fairchild has been doing some other work. Not Alana Fairchild, Lindy Longhurst has done some other work on decks for Blue Angel. So I'll be curious to see what they end up being like. Because it is like getting a little art collection in a box, isn't it? And so much cheaper than buying like 50 art prints from an artist that you like. So, I'm sorry to let her beautiful art go, but maybe this would be a nice deck for somebody else. So, another deck that I'm going to be passing along is the Archetype Cards by Caroline Miss. Now, this was passed on to me by a friend who had been using it and had her time with it and thought I might enjoy it. If this sells, I'll give her the money. But it's a really interesting deck, but it's not. I haven't used it. And the sort of, the approach of this deck, it's kind of intense and psychological, and it's maybe not the way I use Oracle decks at the moment. So that's the complete deck and the guidebook as well. So that's going to move on to somebody else. So that's that one. Now, I have a couple of controversial ones. I might keep those for a little bit later. Just reaching the pile is just here off camera. The Magdalene Oracle by Tony Carmine Salerno. So one of the things I do when I am planning to trade or sell a deck is I have a spreadsheet, which I've shared in a video ages ago. And in the spreadsheet, I record when I got the deck, how much it cost, and the retailer that I got it from. So when I'm planning to sell or trade a deck, I cut and paste it from one tab in the spreadsheet into the sell trade tab. And then I have extra columns, and one of the columns is for the current sale price. So I will search the deck to see how much it's currently going for, and then I can look at how much I paid for it, which sometimes is more, sometimes is less, and how much it's currently going for. And my aim in trying to then decide on what price I want to sell the deck for is I think about the price of posting a small packet within the UK, which is about £3.50-ish. I want to add my sale price and the postage price, and for that to be less than the price of buying it from your large online retailer. And that way I can make sure that it's competitive, that somebody might want to buy a secondhand copy from me instead of, the new one. So that's one of the things I do. And when I was searching up the Magdalene Oracle to see how much it's currently selling for, I discovered something exciting. Cheryl Yambach Rose, who you may know I love, I have one of her decks that I adore. Cheryl Yambach Rose is bringing out a Mary Magdalene themed oracle deck in July of this year. I am so excited to have discovered that this morning when I was looking up. When I googled this, her Magdalene Oracle came up, and my jaw literally dropped open. And so I have no qualms now about letting this Magdalene Oracle go, because I'm definitely going to be getting the Cheryl Yambach Rose's Magdalene Oracle when it comes out. Anyway, I am grinning at the very thought. This is a nice deck, but it never really resonated with me that much. So my very first Oracle deck that I ever got was a Tony Carmine Salerno deck, the Gaia Oracle. I have decided to keep it, even though I never use it anymore for sentimental reasons. Now you can see I have trimmed this. This used to be the size of the box and had borders. So I trimmed the borders off, but I didn't corner around it because of the backs. So I kept it in the sort of rectangle shape for the backs. And then I edged it in like a magenta marker to go with, the backs. So I don't know if somebody's going to want my modified deck, but I'll give it a go. Some of the cards like that, I think that image is actually in the Gaia Oracle as well, which happens a lot with Tony Carmine Salerno decks. You can find like a bit of repetition of the artwork between his decks, which is maybe one of the reasons why having more than one of his decks feels not really necessary to me. So anyway, that one, which is nice, and I used it for about a month, I think, for daily draws, and then I haven't touched it again. So it's time for it to go. This is one I'm not sure about. I was absolutely sure I was going to let it go, and then when I was looking for it online, I couldn't find this edition anymore. It's only available in a maroon box with maroon borders, and I didn't like the look of that at all. So if I had to replace this, if I wanted to get it again later, you'd have to go for the maroon borders, I think. And so I don't know if I have to think about this a little bit more. But I got this as a gift off my wish list for one Christmas or birthday. So I had wanted it. I think I'd seen the art in the Taschen Tarot book, that beautiful art book. And the major arcana are gorgeous, but the minor arcana are very abstract. And it's like one thing I'm learning about myself. Candy said something about, that's Candy Soul and Soil. If you don't watch her channel, go watch her channel. Candy said something in a recent video about her ideal self, and the decks that she'd picked as favorites for like an ideal self rather than the ones she actually really likes. And that is something that spoke to me when I was looking through this deck again. I think I would like to be the kind of person who does deep dive journaling entries about complex, see there's one of the majors, really nice art. Looking at a complex image that's quite abstract, and spending a long time reflecting about it or thinking about it. And there's the mother of feathers, the eye, and the birds. And if you sit with this, you can get a lot out of it, and the majors are really cool. But the honest truth is, that's not the kind of reader that I am. And maybe someday I will be. Maybe it's a bit more thothy or something. I don't know. Like I can see the square here and the you know, there's like a figure in the middle, and, you know, there's a lot to prompt thought. There's a lot to prompt, you know, journaling and reflection and so on. But even though, I mean, that is really cool. The star again, really cool. Even though it is something I can admire, like in that 5 of swords, a 5 of feathers, that's like, you can see this scene here. It's really, ooh. The High Priestess is amazing. For all that, I have never used this, and I've looked through it a lot, but I've never used it. And I think the truth is that while I admire it, it's not exactly my taste in terms of what I find pretty to look at. And so I haven't really used it. And then the guidebook is cool. It has poems for each card. And in terms of taking the time to really think and reflect, and seeing there's a wee stain on the box. Oh dear. But in terms of taking the time to really, you know, reflect on the reading and so on, I tend to like figurative decks where I get a punchy read in pretty quickly. So that's why I picked this as one to go. But then when I saw that it's not available in this format easily anymore, yeah. So we'll think about that a bit more. The Good Tarot by Colette Baron Reid, this is going to go. I haven't shared my March favourites yet, but this is one of the decks I worked with in March. I used this for my bedtime card pull. And yeah, I used it for about 2 weeks, and then I was just like, no, I'm not getting anything out of this. I'm bored. I want to use something else. I'm maybe being unusually brutal in my tone today. I'm usually quite like, oh, I love it, I love it. But when you're getting rid of things, I suppose you're focusing more on the negative, aren't you, than the positive. I mean, as far as this Good Tarot goes, I mean, it's really beautiful. The art is gorgeous. Jenna Della Grottaglia, who did the art for my favourite Oracle deck, The Wisdom of the Oracle, which was also created by Colette Baron Reid. You know, so there's a lot to like in this. I kind of like the dreamy quality of it, and it is pretty. But the images don't speak to the meanings of the cards for me. And so while it is pretty to look at, when I pull that card, 3 of Earth, that doesn't speak to me about collaboration in the workplace or creativity, of working together, of working to fulfill a brief, of working, you know, I think I have to picture the Rider-Waite-Smith 3 of Pentacles in order to remember what the 3 of Earth is supposed to be. Although I haven't said that, I think Colette Baron Reid, because she's predominantly an Oracle deck creator, her style is very much to be dependent on the guidebook. And I have a friend who has this deck and loves it and uses it loads and uses the guidebook. Doesn't try to work with it as a standalone deck, you know, as a tarot deck where they're working from memory. They use the guidebook all the time. And they love it. But this, yeah, I mean, I got this in a trade and I was willing to try it out, but pretty though it is not really for me. So it's going either in a sale or a trade, or we'll see. We'll see what we can do with it. Then what else? Oh, I'm going too slowly. I've got loads more to show you. The Wild Unknown Archetypes. So this is one it was funny because I got it for somebody else for Christmas, and then they got it for me for Christmas the same year. So it has these round cards. Oh, such a good example to say I don't really like the artwork. I really don't like that card at all. I don't have any of the Wild Unknown decks. And again, a little bit like the Margaret Peterson, I can admire this. I can see how, you know, in theory, this is really well done and very creative and interesting as a deck. But I used it a bit, but it has never really spoken to me. In fact, the thing that I enjoyed the most in this deck is the guidebook, which is really well written and full of like jumping off points to go and explore the archetypes that she has included in this deck. So it's interesting, there's 2 archetype card decks in this pile of decks that I'm moving on. So maybe that tells you something about how I work with cards, archetypes are maybe not for me. So that well-known archetypes, that's going to go. I haven't touched it in a long time. I think I only ever pulled about 2 or 3 cards out of it, truth be told. Okay, the Amante Oracle. This is a deck that has kind of been on a little bit of a journey with me, in that when I got it first, I really loved it. I thought it was really cool. And yeah, now I'm just like, I think I've just had my time with it. Like I enjoyed it at the time. And again, I admire it and I think it's pretty cool. I think I mentioned this in a previous video. I think it's almost like it's too cool for me. Like, I don't know, there's something about the style of it or the color scheme of it or something. I admire it. It's kind of like the cool kid in the nightclub that I'm just not really cool enough to hang out with. I don't know. I've used it. I enjoyed it. I didn't really enjoy the guidebook that much, but I enjoyed the keywords of the cards and so on. But it's had its time with me. It's time for it to go. This deck, the Angel Oracle by Ambica Waters. This was also another deck I got in a trade. The guidebook is absolutely immaculate. The box looks like it's been through the wars, but the cards and the deck are absolutely fine. When this came in, I kind of liked it. Sort of classic angels looking. But since then, I have got the Angel Guide Oracle by Kyle Gray, and I like it much better. It has like racially diverse depictions of angels. It's more modern in its art style, so I find it prettier to look at. So if I want an angel deck, I have that Angel Guide Oracle that I'll use instead. So this is going to go. Another deck, one that might surprise people a little, that so the Amante Tarot. I know, shocking. Look, I like the Amante Tarot. I like the colours. I like how there's so much yellows and blues. Some of the cards, like that Judgment card, are really awesome. I love that Wheel of Fortune card. But I don't love it enough to use it more than other decks that I've got, if you know what I mean. Like, I think if I got this as one of my first tarot decks, I probably would really adore it. But because I didn't get it till much later, and I have other decks that similarly, you know, have personality and are figurative and, you know, have that narrative quality that this, like, there's a real storybook quality, this deck. And looking at it, I'm like, yeah, look, I do, I like it. But I don't use it because I have other decks that I use more. So I might as well pass it on to somebody who's going to use it. And that's the mass market version of the Amante Tarot. The Crystal Tarot by Elisabetta Trevisan. So I have had this for ages and I got it and I wanted to learn to read with pips. And eventually then I did learn to read with pips. Using Tarot on Earth by Tom Benjamin, which is an excellent book if you want to read Marseille style cards. And I found, so I trimmed this. This was had bigger cards with like white borders with multiple languages on them. I found when I was trying to learn to read pips with this deck that I find it hard to see how many there was. I love the court cards and the majors. I think they're really beautifully done. But the pips I found a bit busy. So I think I did a nice enough job on the trim. So hopefully if anybody is interested in a trimmed version of the Crystal Tarot, that somebody might go for this. But what I ended up doing was I bought Le Tarot Noir. And that is the one I used the whole time I was learning to read pips. So I feel like if I didn't even use this when I was learning to read pips, I'm not going to use it. So that can go to somebody else who maybe fancies a trimmed version. The Everyday Tarot, I've had this for a while. This is the Bridget Esselmont Biddy Tarot deck. Oh, this box. I never liked that box design. So there's a little bit of damage to that plastic flap on the box, and then the little guidebooks in there. I basically got it because I listened to the Biddy Tarot podcast from start to finish and had used a lot of the free resources on their website, and I thought I'd better buy something. I owed them that much to buy the tarot deck. I like how directional these wee cards are. And did you know they've actually softened up in terms of, it used to be you couldn't do this with them at all because they were so clumpy. And now they've definitely loosened up a lot. She says, starting to rethink her decision. No, I've never really used this very much. It is handy for like directional readings, you know, looking at who's looking at who or what direction they're looking in and so on. But no, I've never really used it that much, and it's time to let it go. I mean, it's not a deck that I'll get a lot of money for because it's quite cheap to buy new, but it's just sitting there. Another deck that is ready to move on, and you'll know about this if you've watched my video on the PreRaphaelite Tarot. So this deck is by Giuliano Costa, and they're all reimaginings of PreRaphaelite paintings, but with tarot elements added in. The one thing that anybody who gets this deck from me will end up with is like an annotated little white book where I've written in the paintings that the cards are based on. So the person who gets this from me, I'll just have to let them know, I guess, that there's some annotations on the little white book. But yeah, I never used it. It just never really grabbed me. So that one's going too. Okay, we're starting to get closer to the controversial ones. Are you still with me? Tarot, the Divine Feminine Oracle. This is one I hung on to for a long time because I kept pulling the Bridget card, and I felt like I should keep it because I bought it in Kildare, which is where St. Bridget had her cathedral, and where the eternal flame for the goddess Bridget was burned and so on. But yes, I have never really enjoyed the art in this deck. The sort of the photos, I think I'd have preferred it if it was drawings, maybe. It's a good book. I like Megan Watterson. I have read her book about Mary Magdalene and I really liked it. But yeah, that Oracle deck is leaving, as is the Pierpoint Morgan Visconti Sforza reprint by US Games. This was again one of those ones I bought during lockdown. It was interesting to have sort of for historical curiosity purposes. It's massive, as you can see, the cards are huge. So yeah, it's interesting, but I mean, it's not like I'm reading with it, so that can go. Okay, here are the last few, the shocking ones that you might be cross with me about. I don't know. Okay, the Dark Mansion Tarot. It's so pretty, but I've been thinking about getting rid of this for ages, for a couple of years. And again, it has really loosened up as well. It used to be really stiff and it's not as sticky as it used to be. And I really still love some of that, like, oh, that Nine of Swords. I love that. And the Queen of Pentacles. Oh, what are you doing to me? You show me all the pretty ones. But I don't use it. Even at Halloween or something, I didn't really take it out and use it. And it's such a lovely deck. It's in pristine condition. I think it just be better going to somebody else who's going to use it. And I've hemmed and hawed over that one so much. You probably wouldn't have been terribly surprised by that. The Tarot of the Cloisters. Now, this is one that I searched high and low for and eventually got it on a trade group online. This book deck was published in 1993 and it is a round tarot deck. And it was one that I really wanted because I really wanted a round deck, and this was the round deck that I thought looked the nicest. And I just, again, haven't used it very much, if at all. And maybe a handful of times. And I still think it's a really cool round deck. but it was really expensive to get secondhand. And one of the things that bothers me is that there is a pirated version of this deck, which is tiny, like a mini version. And it comes with a PDF guidebook, you know, so when you Google Tarot of the Cloisters, oh look, there's the index card in the middle of it. When you Google Tarot of the Cloisters, like one of the suggestions that comes up is Tarot of the Cloisters PDF guidebook. And it's just, you know, it's one of the things people search for a lot, you know, whereas this is the US Games guidebook, the little white book that came with the deck originally. So on eBay, you see this deck going for £6.50, but it's this tiny rip-off version, and then like 120 quid. And I don't know how people who are new to tarot are supposed to navigate this. Oh, it just annoys me. Even my local metaphysical shop was selling the ripped off version of this deck in this tiny box. And when I spoke to the retailer about it and said, you know, that's a rip-off deck, that deck normally retails for, I was sort of telling them about the prices because it's out of print. And he just said, well, aren't you lucky you can get it for cheaper here? And I'm like, you're totally missing the point. Anyway, so I think I'm going to try to sell it, but if I don't get a similar price to what I paid for it, if I don't get anybody interested for that kind of money, or trading it for something of equal sort of value that I'm interested in, then I'll probably just hang on to it. Because, you know, it did take a long time to find this deck when I was looking for it originally. So there's that, the Tarot of the Cloisters. And finally, dun dun dun, the Shimmering Veal by Cilla Conway. I can hardly believe I'm saying this. And it's partly because when I got this deck, oh wow, I loved it when I got it. And I've put it back in order, actually. So committed to the idea of passing this on am I have already put it back in order. I sat and went through it one evening. I love that Empress card so much. I just love it. It's like this beautiful celestial mother, gorgeous. And I think this, like the Marguerite Peterson Tarot, it's like, I don't have soul cards. I don't have anything like that. I don't really use cards in that sort of meditative deep dive into kind of abstract art way, although I love that star card. It is very cool. It reminds me actually of a story that a friend told me about Kuan Yin, and this just really represents that that story to me very, very much. So it's beautiful. A friend whose family venerates Kuan Yin told me this story. Anyway, I'll not go into that now. But yeah, it's like when I did a video maybe a year or so ago about like my favorite versions of each card, I picked cards from this deck quite a lot. But I haven't really been using it, and the reason is that I don't really read with this type of deck very much. I prefer, like, let's be honest, I'm a bit basic. I prefer figurative decks, like, I don't know, the Rider-Waite-Smith. No, like This Might Hurt, or Morgan Greer, or the Druidcraft, or, you know, where they're a bit more straightforward and people-centered. And this is just so beautiful, but I am going to pass it on to someone who will enjoy it and use it. So there you go. 17 decks that are leaving my collection. There were 2 more that were on the chopping block that I was thinking about getting rid of. And those were the Mythic Tarot, the original Mythic Tarot, which I have a first edition of, which again I stalked on eBay until I got one, which I haven't used. And also the Fountain Tarot that I've had for a while and don't use that much. But when I took both out to look through them, I was like, I don't know, I really like the art. I don't use them, but I like the art. Maybe one day I'll use them. And I pulled a card. This is often what I do when I'm trying to decide on whether to keep or get rid of a deck. I pulled a card to see if the card spoke to me, or And with both of those decks, I got the High Priestess. I pulled the High Priestess from the Fountain Tarot first, and then I was paging through the Mythic Tarot, and I thought, I wonder what card I'll get from this, and I got the High Priestess as well. And I thought, okay, maybe there's some work I can do with these decks in the future. So they've stayed on the shelf, but I'm going to be listing the others pretty soon for sale. So anyway, by the time I upload this, it might be already done. But anyway, thank you for watching. Please share your shock and horror at the decks I'm getting rid of with me in the comments below. And if you've made it all the way to the end, perhaps you can put a shocked face emoji in the comments so I know that you listened for a whole 30 minutes and 48 seconds. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.